Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Tuesday, June 17th. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 66 of the Inside the Huddle podcast. We're back after a week off. Another episode for you guys today. June rolls on. Mini camps. Some took place last week, some happening this week. So, mini camps, off-season workouts, all that kind of stuff closing out here as we hit this dead zone before training camp that begins, of course, late July. So getting closer, final month without, I guess, actual football, like notable football stuff happening. Because once training camp begins, there's so much stuff, of course, the practices, always get a ton of news, contract stuff. Well, a lot of times that stuff gets ironed out there closer to then. So we got a lot to get into today. We'll get into a lot of AFC North stuff. Nick Chubb out from Cleveland, goes to Houston. New quarterback in Pittsburgh. We'll break that down, break down the offense, and in the drama with the Bengals right now. A couple edge rushers holding out, including their rookie Shamar Stewart. So, DiMari, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Like you said, we are kind of getting to this dead period, but before you know it, we will be at the Hall of Fame game, which is early August, so just about another month and a half to get through. But yeah, actually been a pretty good week as far as news. Like you said, AFC North has been quite the headline, just everything in the North basically going on with the three that you just mentioned. So, let's get into it.
Yeah, Hall of Fame game, July 31st, actually. So, exactly the last month without a football game until February, essentially. So, yeah, exciting times getting closer. Honestly, all AFC North teams, everybody, yeah, like you mentioned, making noise, really, except the Ravens, it feels like.
Yeah,
Because even the Browns,
game,
yeah, even though Chubb's on the way out, Shador's still making noise. Of course, that quarterback situation is going to catch headlines for the rest of the summer, the entire summer. You got the Pittsburgh stuff, that's going to be a headline all summer. And then, of course, the Bengals, we'll see how much longer these contract holdouts are a headline if they get these things figured out. We'll touch on those things later on, though. We'll start with Chubb. He signs with the Houston Texans, so the Texans bring in another former AFC North quarterback, or running back, rather, to pair with Joe Mixon, of course, the former Bengal. Chubb comes in, 1-year deal, $2.5 million, worth up to $5 million. So Chubb, right, the elite running back, torn ACL, horrible knee injury. Last season came back, just eight games played. You could tell he was coming off the injury. Now, though, fully healthy. Intriguing pickup here for the Texans for a running back that is still, if he can get back healthy, still, let's maybe say end of his prime, but still good years left, it feels like, for Chubb if he can get back to his old ways.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly would hate to be a defender right now in the trying to tackle Chubb, or you get mixing some Joe Mixon and you get some Nick Chubb to kind of switching as your 1-2 punch. But I guess a little bit of a hot take. I think that kind of might have moved Houston as one of my favorites to possibly win the AFC. I'm not going to say the Super Bowl. I'm going to say AFC, which we were both high on them coming to this year. Obviously, Stroud didn't look too good. A lot of injuries, and they will be dealing with injuries, as they come back. Tank Dell won't be back, but got some other rookies to rely on that they drafted at the receiver position. But, I mean, if you're C.J. Stroud, I mean, you have to be in heaven right now. I mean, regardless of how well you are as a quarterback, how effective you are, how efficient you are, you always want a good run game. So you already had Joe Mixon, who had a very great year from just a scrimmage perspective as a pass catcher and a running back. Now you throw in Nick Chubb, and like you said, you can tell he's still coming off the injuries. Still fairly, I don't want to say old, fairly young, but we'll be 30 in December. But I'm right with you. I think Nick Chubb still has like a good 2 to 3 years of being effective, and he's very healthy. And I mean, this is a guy that every year was a guaranteed lock for almost like to be a Pro Bowler, 1,000 yards. And now you add him to this offense, which already ran the ball super well when, Joe Mixon was actually getting the touches he was supposed to. So I love it for Houston. And honestly, for Joe Mixon's sake too, he was carrying the ball a lot. There was games we seen Mixon, 28, 30, 26 carries. So now it kind of takes a lot off of him, and you have a reliable back behind you in Nick Chubb, once again, who has been one of the better backs since he's come into the league. So I like the move from Houston. I like the move for Nick Chubb. Obviously, wish Dallas would have called him. He was linked. Who isn't linked to Dallas? But I like it for both. And, for Nick Chubb, this is a guy who's been so good throughout his career, and the injuries absolutely suck. But change of scenery, fully healthy behind that offensive line, which is pretty good in terms of run blocking. You got mixing, you got weapons. I mean, I think sky's the limit for Nick Chubb. So hopefully he can stay healthy and he can win more than he did in Cleveland. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that I think you should see more out of Chubb. Is he should be on more of the winning side of things. His time in Cleveland was a couple playoff appearances, but not much else. Great career, obviously, in Cleveland, right? You just kind of rehash it and go back. Since getting taken in 2018 in the second round, 4 times he had over 1,000 yards. Like you mentioned, I think that's one of the biggest things with Chubb is just the consistency, and just to throw the fantasy football route out there. Every year, it feels like there is a running back that people fall in love with. Like I am a victim of the Austin Eckler, 2023 hype train, right? I think it was.
You and I both.
Yeah, I fell for that, and that was a disaster. Every year. Last year, I think a lot of people were hyping up Breece Hall. I remember he was. I think some actually had him as ADP up to number 2, right behind him and Christian McCaffrey. Every year, it feels like there's that running back. My point to all this is Chubb before the injury has been just one of the most consistent year in and year out running backs, health wise as well. Like this was a guy that he did miss some time in 2020, if I recall, missed a couple games, only played 12 out of the 16. But outside of that, 16 in 2018, 16 in 2019, both of those full seasons back when they just played 16 games. And in 2021 played 14, 2022 played 17. This was a guy that was consistently out there. And every single year, the numbers were just so consistent. From 2018 to 2022, each year he had over 5 yards a carry. He had at least 8 touchdowns in all of those seasons, including 12 in 2020 and 12 in 2022 again. And just the 1,000-yard marks, 1,400, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, like just the definition of consistency year in and year out. I bring up the fantasy element because it felt like you'd go for that guy the draft day darling, and in every single year, Chubb was always that reliable option. And you hope from a Houston perspective he can get back to that. You don't know if he'll get fully back to that, but you're not necessarily asking him to fully get back to that because now he's got a legitimate piece next to him as well in Joe Mixon. I think they balance each other really well. And like you mentioned, I think this is a good thing for the Texans and Mixon as well. Mixon ran the ball 245 times last year. You mentioned some of the carries and some of how much times he got the football. I mean, 25, like you mentioned, multiple times. Week 1 against the Colts, he had 30 in that game. Tons of carries for Mixon. Now you can, just from a Texans perspective, balance that a little bit more between Chubb, between Mixon, 2 good running backs. Mixon as well, a very consistent running back, even going back to his days in Cincy, a consistent close to or at 1,000-yard rusher going back to since he entered the league in 2017 out of Oklahoma. Yeah, it's exciting. This is a Texans team that I think I just look at this Texans team in general and you get excited for them because last year there was so much hype around them and it felt like a little bit the hype maybe got to them. Now they're kind of not flying under the radar, but now they're back to, I guess, normal hype around them a little bit. Not really many doubters, but I guess I'll ask you that. Like, do you feel last year there was so much hype, they kind of struggled a bit? Now they're back to, okay, last year was the big hyped up season. Now it's kind of back to business in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, I think sometimes, too, you kind of need that. And I think last year kind of humbled them again. Injuries and just a lot of things not going so well. But after that first year, how well C.J. Stroud played, how well they played, you look into year 2, and you're like, I think we both thought they were winning 12, 13 games last season. So we thought, everyone coming back. Obviously, year 2, C.J. Stroud, him kind of learning the offense is better, reading defenses better, they'll be a lot better. But, I mean, from last year, they were a bit disappointing. Yes, injuries played a role and other things kind of occurred. But now you look at this Houston team, and I think you kind of said it perfectly where you're not looking at them as a legitimate threat in the AFC. It's more like, hey, Houston's going to be good. Houston's going to win the division, but Houston's going to get knocked down in the wild card round. So they're not really a threat. They're not really a scary team. But I mean, once again the two backs kind of start rolling, they gel. Again, I know Tank Dell won't be healthy to start the year. You lose Stephon Diggs, but once you get Collins going and then Jalen Noel that they drafted, and some of those young guys to kind of step up, yeah, I think it's gonna be a Houston team that we once again feel as a threat to the Chiefs and the Ravens and those other teams. But right now, kind of floating amongst with everyone else of Houston will be good, but we don't see them doing anything serious outside the wild card round.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm interested to see too, like you mentioned, Jalen Noel, how does he progress throughout camp? That's something to look for. Those guys are gonna have to step up, of course, with Dell, missing time to start the year. You've also got Jaden Higgins, who they drafted, both those Iowa State guys. I like that approach with Houston too, where they lost Diggs. Dell's gonna miss time. Okay, what do you do about it? You go out there and take two good receivers in day number 2.
That's huge.
Yeah, definitely. And even Dalton Schultz, like, can he have a little bit of a down year last year from where he was 2023? How does he bounce back this season? Can he have a better year than he did last year? Was pretty disappointing in some areas last year. Had more catches and more yards in less games played in 2023 than he did last year. So he's somebody to look for as potentially bouncing back at this stage. Now, from the Browns' perspective here, without Chubb, because it's funny, this is the first time not going to have Chubb leading the way there since 2018. It's just, I'm sorry, just looking at the Browns depth chart, it's just ugly. I mean, you pull it up and it's, there's some hope there for Shador and whoever else, whether Dylan Gabriel, whatever, but there's not much you're working with. It feels like Jerome Ford takes over that number one role. You, of course, also drafted Quishon Judkins. What was it? Judkins? Yeah. Who do you think? Is that a running back by committee? What are your thoughts there between those guys?
Personally, I mean, can't even lie, I've not kept up with anything Cleveland has done in camp. Everything has been, Shador Sanders, anything you do see about Cleveland. But I think going into the season, you go, well, let's say camp. Currently in camp, you roll with Jerome Ford as your RB1, just considering that veteran presence, and you want a vet kind of to start things out. And then, if Ford continues to outperform Judkins in camp, in week 1, obviously you continue to go with Ford. But I honestly think, week 4 or 5, we might see Judkins take over that role, because if you watch him at Ohio State, even at Ole Miss before he transferred over to the Buckeyes, he's explosive. Like, he's an explosive back. He has a lot of speed. He breaks tackles. He does everything you want from a young back. And for Cleveland's sake, he is young, obviously way younger than Nick Chubb, so he's going to give you that extra spark that, Chubb obviously didn't give you last year, even though he only played 8 games, and then 2 years before that. So, again, with kind of just like the new scenery, a new face, is fresh for Judkins. Ford, I think, is a very good RB2. I don't think he is RB1 ready. So, personally, I would go with Judkins as my starting back, depending on how he looks in camp. But if Cleveland's the smart thing to do for Shador, I think, is roll out with the vet, kind of let him see how that kind of goes, and then eventually go a new direction if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and you mentioned Judkins both at Ole Miss and after he moved to Ohio State, 3 straight 1,000-yard season in college. And practically, and we always say those late, like the early day 2 picks, a lot of times are kind of like an add-on to the first round. I think a lot of those players you take in the later 30s, a lot of times teams view as even potential day 1 talents. Judkins, of course, 36 overall pick early in round 2 with where the Browns are picking. So somebody that they clearly are high on. And I agree. I could see them rolling with Ford early and then midway through making that change, or that's something that just happens straight out of training camp. I think in a perfect world, Judkins just takes over out of camp and he's your guy for the future. Because, like you mentioned, Ford hasn't really – he's had a chance to prove himself, and he hasn't really done it to prove as he is the long-term number one. So, and you just I guess just looking at this offense, I mean, there's just a lot of there's a lot of I guess unknowns that could be like. I mean, you have Judy, who is your number one receiver. You have David Njoku, two proven guys. You don't really know what the quarterback is. Outside of Judy, you don't really know. Running back is still a question mark. There's just so many questions with this offense, frankly, this team in general. I mean, I guess best case scenario, these questions turn into, long-term answers. I mean, what are you going to get out of Deontay Johnson? Like, what does his season look like this year? How is he going to act? Is there anybody else on that Browns roster that you're looking at just in terms of what they might bring this season?
Oh yeah, Harold Fanning, the tight end they drafted out of Green, which I know his 40 time kind of hurt him as far as where he landed in the draft, but statistically, from a receiving standpoint,
yes,
this is a guy that was better than Tyler Warren. This is a guy that's better than Colston Loveland. I think he put up 1,700 yards, and yes, Bowling Green, you're playing in the MAC, but you go look at some teams where, like Texas A&M, absolutely torched Texas A&M on the road. So this is a guy that's proved like he can play at any level. So it's going to be just quite interesting to see how he compares with Njoku, considering they are kind of the similar type of like a receiving tight end. So how they might run some two tight end sets, those type of things. But again, I know the 40 time might have scared some people away, but what you see on tape from Harold Fanning is so much different than what you saw of him running in shorts and a t-shirt, at the combine in Indy. So I think he has a very good year and does a good compliment for Njoku, and also just opens up more for Shador or Gage or whoever's the quarterback come week one. But yeah, one of them from
the cast of characters.
But yeah,
somebody's got to be under center. Yeah. Maybe it'll be one of us. They'll call us up.
I mean, it's Gabriel, Shador, Pickett, Flacco, you, me, the guy I know at Publix that works in seafood. Everyone can play quarterback for the Browns. This is just how that roster is constructed.
Stefanski might have to get under center, little player coach.
For a few games. A few.
Who knows? But yeah, no, I like Fannin as well. Just did a lot of digging on him as well. I think a lot of people 40, and I just think too, a lot of times people, when they see if you don't play for a Power 4 conference, they kind of shy away. Even, with it being the MAC, a lot of times people question, like competition, stuff like that. You can't take away what Fannin Jr. did last year, numbers wise. One of the better receivers in college football from statistical standpoint, let alone tight ends and receivers. Quickly, just one more thing on Houston. A move like this, we talked about the receiver room, just going back to them, I don't see how there's a world they do not take home this division again. And you just continue to look at this division. It's so lopsided, where it's Houston, stability, and then it's maybe Tennessee is this year's Commanders. Maybe they're one of those teams that, with Cam Ward, has a huge year. Who knows? Indy is probably the most boring team in football right now with their two quarterback options and just everything over there. I don't think there is any chance that team is challenging Houston. There's no way Richardson and Daniel Jones are going to put up anywhere near the production to help their team win like Stroud. And then we know where Jacksonville's at, which is neither of us think that Trevor Lawrence is that good. So this is, again, just another reminder, Houston should have no problem running away with this division. And that's saying something, because last year the division wasn't great, right? Everybody finished under 500 except Houston. I expect the same this year, out of those teams.
I think if there's one that might finish barely at 9-8, that might be Tennessee, depending on kind of what we see out of Ward and those guys over there. But this is literally Houston's to lose. Not going to go back over the other two teams. We don't believe in either one of them or their quarterback situation. So, Houston, it's in your ballpark.
Yeah. That's the funny part is, and I guess the sad part if you're a Jacksonville or Colts fan, and this is our opinion, obviously, but it really does feel like if there was a team to make a jump, it would be Tennessee, which is crazy to think because they were a 3-win team last year. right? But it's just the way the NFL has been the last couple of years, where you've had these surprises every single season. Last year, right, you saw Washington with the number 2 overall pick in Jalen Daniels. Like, that is number 1 pick in Cam Ward. He has a huge year, monster season. He's got some pieces around him. We'll see. Only time will tell. But that's the Texan stuff. Chubb in Houston after first, 7 years of his career in Cleveland. So he moves on. Pairs with Mixon, former AFC North as well. So we'll stay in the AFC North, and we'll move on over to Pittsburgh now. Or we'll jump to the AFC North, head to Pittsburgh, then we'll move over to Cincinnati. Pittsburgh felt like this was coming for a while. Rodgers, this was the worst kept secret in football. Rodgers to Pittsburgh, 1-year deal, $13.65 million, $10 million in guaranteed, can be worth up to $19.5 million with incentives. So those are the contract logistics. Like I said, this is the worst kept secret in football. We all knew this was coming. Really, the last 3 months, it feels like all these other teams kind of got out of the running. It was Pittsburgh. It was Rodgers. It was just like every offseason, waiting for Rodgers to make up his mind. So before we get into the Steelers and the offense and what they can look like, what was just your thoughts on Rodgers to the Steelers? Although we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about Rodgers a lot. Everybody kind of saw this coming. No real surprise here, but what were your takeaways?
Yeah, no surprise. We talked about it almost every single week. Everyone kind of knew it, even, when around the draft time, and they were talking about what moves Pittsburgh might possibly make, what Rodgers might do, retirement, not retire. We knew he was going to Pittsburgh. We're not surprised. I know he didn't look great last year, but I honestly think this is the best bet for Pittsburgh to be more competitive in that division. Obviously, this is a team that has always been competitive with the quarterback play that we're not going to go back over. But the QB room has not been great for Pittsburgh, and they found a way to stay in the mix, stay in the hunt, make the playoffs, stay positive. So for Rodgers' sake, I mean, you are there to kind of prove yourself. These last 2 years with the Jets, obviously not really counting the first one with the injury, but last year with the Jets, you looked terrible. You looked absolutely awful. I think that's a big part of why he did not retire. I didn't think he wanted to go out that way, and I think we both might agree on this, but if Rodgers would have retired after last season, legacy probably would have been shattered with how bad he looked. So I think this is a great way for him to bounce back. I like the move for Pittsburgh, obviously, with that group of guys that you call the QB room. Rodgers is an instant upgrade. So hopefully we'll see him, stay healthy, but let's just see how competitive they can be this year.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an upgrade. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. Whether you like Rodgers, don't like Rodgers, Jet fan like me, and suffered through 2 years of the Rodgers era, you have to admit this was the right move for Pittsburgh. Where else were they going to go? You cannot consider yourself a serious contender and tell the fan base that you're trying to make the playoffs and all that stuff, and not rebuilding, not trying to reset and tank by throwing out Mason Rudolph or Will Howard or heck Skylar Thompson if he somehow miraculously won the job. This was the right move for this 1 year. Rodgers is a massive upgrade over all those guys. Not hard to do, but he is a massive upgrade over all those guys. And also, I think too, just long-term wise, you hope that Rodgers can be a mentor potentially for Will Howard as well. This gives Will Howard an opportunity now to sit, right? You're not throwing him right into the fire. Because let's say they had Mason Rudolph out there. There's a good chance Mason Rudolph would have been so bad they would have had to put Will Howard in anyway. Rodgers gives you, if he's healthy, the 17-game insurance for one season, and then you figure out your plan for 2026. So, yeah, I agree with what you said there. It's the right move. It's a move we've been waiting for a while to officially see come across. I guess just from an offensive perspective with Pittsburgh, I will say this: the Rodgers in the Steelers uniform. There's been so many memes of, Emmitt Smith in a Cardinals uniform, all the washed up players, Adrian Peterson in a Titans uniform, Jerry Rice with the Seahawks. Like there's been so many of those memes I've seen, which
Yeah,
I just can't help but
you
laugh.
know, the vibes
Or
are, Celtic Shaq or
yeah,
Charlotte Hornets,
yeah,
Tony Parker. It's a few of them
yeah.
I can pull out, but
Yeah.
it doesn't look right. Rodgers in a Steelers uniform just does not look right at all.
Honestly, or just name any player, any older player that has gone to the Tennessee Titans. That's another
Literally,
one. Like Julio Jones, even
Randy
Jamal
Moss.
Adams, Randy Moss. You got Andre Johnson, another one. Just name like all the notable signings that the Titans have made in the last 20 years. That'll fit the billing perfectly as well. But no, yeah, it's funny seeing, the Rodgers in the Steelers uniform compared to all these other old players. And we'll see if that comes out true, where if we look back on this single season with the Steelers and say, my God, he was horrible, who knows? But now with this offense, it's funny because they actually asked Arthur Smith about this the other day they were run first team, how they were going to change their heavy run mentality to then balance it with Rodgers and his, the passing and having a more of a threat from a passing perspective. I guess just what do you think the balance is going to be? Personally, I think you're going to see a ton of passing from this team. There is no balance with Aaron Rodgers. I witnessed it firsthand last year. It's the guy that's going to go out there and throw 40 times a game, even if it's not working. And their running back room has got some questions. Obviously, you really don't know what Jaylen Warren is going to bring. You did draft Caleb Johnson, of course, in early or later day 2 out of Iowa. But how do you project this offense? Do you think this makes them increasingly better than last year? We talked about Pittsburgh offense already. Is there going to be life?
I think you got to go pass heavy. I think this is finally going to be that flip of the switch of your offense being more of a modern NFL offense, even though, which is kind of crazy for me to say, considering we both I have watched Aaron Rodgers own my football team since it seems like the beginning of time. You had watched all 17 games of Rodgers last year, but it feels like he wants an old school offense. He likes the under the center, the play action, that type of stuff, which is so not necessarily considered older, but not modern, not pistol shotgun, which we're seeing a lot of. But I say that to say, we talk about Pittsburgh and how old their offense is and outdated. Rodgers with this old, outdated play style. But I think with them going more pass heavy, that's going to kind of force the hand of Rodgers to, one, change his play style, and for Pittsburgh to change their play style as well as an offense. So, you also look at the division where they're playing in. Look at the Bengals, look at the Ravens, how much they score, how quick they score. Yeah. And obviously Pittsburgh's defense has always kind of been their rock. That's what they kind of fall back on. But it's kind of, it gets to the point you need to score some points. And they are not going to do that with, a 60-40 type of offense when it comes to running the ball. They don't have the offensive line to do that. They don't have the running back room to do that. At this moment, like you just said, there's question marks. Maybe that room transforms into that. As of now, I think you kind of lean on the arm of Rodgers, let Rodgers and DK kind of get it flowing and just go out there and basically live and die by Rodgers. That's all you can do, and let everything else kind of just flow.
Yeah, I think that's what they will do. I guess my big concern is how much of the Rodgers type of offense do they really install? Because just looking back at it last year, there was no urgency within that offense. They were late to the line of scrimmage a lot of times. You had a lot of delay games. And you mentioned, right, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cincy, those teams scoring fast. I am interested how much urgency and speed that Pittsburgh's tempo that they're actually going to play with. Because I think it's another thing in terms of just modern NFL offense that Pittsburgh probably needs a little bit more of. You can't be moving so slow all the time, so sluggish. You can't pick up 3 yards on a play and get back to the huddle slowly. And you got to have some tempo, got to have some energy, got to try and build some momentum. Something that Rodgers never has really done in his career, especially didn't do it last year. And I'm interested to see if that's something that they try and implement, a little bit more tempo, try and provide a little bit of a boost from that perspective. But yeah, it's going to be the Rodgers and DK Metcalf show. And outside of DK Metcalf, you've got questions about the receiver room, of course. Robert Woods is a steady veteran, but nobody that's going to really put much fear into an opposing defense's eyes. But Pat Fryermuth's solid. Calvin Austin's still, younger, but I still have my doubts, I guess, with the Steelers offense. I just think I don't know. The combo of a 41-year-old, it should be better, but is it enough to reach Baltimore? Is it enough to reach Cincy? Is it enough to reach some of these other top offenses in the AFC? Or is it another 10-7, 8-point road underdogs against the Ravens in the playoffs or Buffalo or whoever they face in the wild card round just to lose? A 41-year-old Rodgers and an Arthur Smith, that scares you a bit. There is part of that that's just like, ugh.
I think the only thing that can potentially be worse than that is Bane blowing up your stadium, the opening kickoff. Other than that, I mean, that's not a good mix considering how bad Arthur Smith was in Atlanta and then how Rodgers has looked and how things went. So it's like, in a sense, you want to be happy for Pittsburgh. Like, all right, you guys got a vet. This is great. Someone that can help you contend, but it's going to be a long year for Pittsburgh. I feel bad for that fan base.
They'll be a little bit better. It's just last year with Russell Wilson playing right outside the first, 6 games, they still finished 10-7. I guess how much better will Rodgers and that offense be with Wilson? Unless if you feel Rodgers is that much of an upgrade. Unless if you feel that DK is an upgrade over Pickens.
Yeah.
So you have an upgrade at wide receiver 1. Rodgers probably is an upgrade over Russ. So you do have upgrades there. And you're going to take that pass-heavy approach. And then the whole Mike Tomlin aspect of it as well. I'm interested to see that whole dynamic with Tomlin and Rodgers. This doesn't seem like something that would fit, in my opinion. But clearly it's fit enough. And I'll say this too. They got a lot of work to do. And it's going to be very telling, in my opinion, how they start because Rodgers missed all of OTAs. He was only there for a couple of those mini camp practices. This is new team, going to have a little bit new system in a way as well, even though he's going to throw some of his stuff on there. Training camp is going to be they've got to ramp up quickly because it took so long for Rodgers to sign that they're almost going to have to learn on the fly all of training camp. And then once regular season comes around, they're going to have to figure it out pretty early because you can't afford to get off to a slow start in that division and just in general in the AFC. If anything, it's been the opposite. Pittsburgh's gone off to the fast starts the last couple of years, and then they collapse late in the season. There's a real chance where they get off to a slow start. Rodgers notoriously gets off to slow starts, and then they pick it up later in the year. So there's someone to look for, someone to watch again. Will we be talking about week 11? It'll be like the 8-3 Steelers, and this year it's finally different. Will those conversations be happening?
No, no, I don't think so. I think we have seen, and not even because of who they have at quarterback, but we have seen Pittsburgh start so hot for so many years. I mean, do you remember 2020 when they were 11-0 and no one believed in the Pittsburgh Steelers? We have talked about this team almost every year in, year out. Fast starts, 11-0, 8-3, whatever the case is, and they're still not taken seriously as a contender. So I think this will be a team very similar, probably sit at 7-4. And it was like, okay, 7-4, possibly still in reach of the division, and they are going to pull their best Miami Dolphins impression and sink like they always do. So I don't think we're taking them serious this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Last year was the first time it actually felt different for some odd reason. Yeah. I don't know why. I actually kind of bought in. It was probably because they actually went on the road and beat Burrow and the Bengals with 40-plus points, and that's not something a Steelers team would ever do. But then they had that tough stretch. And you look at the schedule. I mean, they get Baltimore. You look at their December games. They get Baltimore, twice. Detroit, Miami. They'll play Buffalo.
Looking
November
like 4
onward gets
losses.
tough. Yeah, you got Cincy is in November. On the road in Chicago could be tough, although Rodgers does own the Bears. But yeah, it's funny though. I was just bringing it up. This could be the opposite. Like they might get off to a slow start. There's a real chance they do because of the signing happening so late, not having much time, missed all of OTAs, new system for all these guys, and then maybe turn it on late. It's going to be very intriguing to follow this whole Rodgers, Tomlin, Arthur Smith, how it all works. Still probably third place in the division.
Yeah.
You can't get much rounds.
No. I mean, probably, like I said, I think once again, 10-7 is probably the perfect place to put them. I'm thinking 10-7, third place in division, probably get a 7 seed to lose to maybe a second seed Houston team. Hot take. Very early hot take. Second seeded Houston team. They go to Houston and lose.
You know, it'd be funny if they do face Houston and lose to Stroud. Remember last year Stroud commented on Rodgers? When was that?
Yeah.
That was, I think, closely. I forget what the exact comments were. Was it about Rodgers' career, Eli? Was it that whole debate?
It was, yeah, I think it was that. I don't remember what he said, but I do remember he was on. I think he was on a podcast with Tank Dell, and they were having a conversation with Eli Rodgers debate thing.
I remember that. That took over. Like the Eli Rodgers debate was a big topic in June. I remember last year.
I think we even talked about it the week, like that same week. I think we kind of chipped in on it.
It is funny because I like Stroud a lot, but the Jets defense has had his number. They beat him twice. They've seen him twice. They beat him twice. I will throw that out there. But yes, the Rodgers Eli debate was a hot one last year. None of those have popped up. We haven't got any podcasts, I guess, headlines. You know, remember even the Tyreek Hill top 5 quarterbacks? That was one for the ages.
I think
Baker Mayfield. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it was outrageous. I remember it was outrageous. But everyone's focused on actually playing football this time around.
Yeah.
So maybe Micah Parsons gives us a little something interesting here in a few weeks.
We might. And speaking of Micah Parsons, couple edge rushers looking for contracts. Cincy dealing with a lot. I'll tell you what, it's ugly right now with the Bengals. There's just so many question marks. And I like the Bengals a lot heading into this year. I really do. I think there's a legitimate chance that they can get back to the Super Bowl. But this offseason's been ugly. And it's happening with 2 players on defense. Your best pass rusher, one of the best pass rushers, arguably the best pass rusher in football. So rookie Shamar Stewart, I guess we could start with him because he's more of just the whole – his stuff is crazy to me. Your 17th overall pick, essentially holding out, was at practice the one day, then left, I believe, for OTAs. Wasn't at least not practicing. And you read more into it, the whole dispute, for some of you that might not fully know, there's something with the language in the contract that would void guaranteed money in future years for Stewart, and he doesn't want that. And there was an example that I saw tossed around on how this would affect him is like if Stewart were ever suspended for even like an odd field thing, that it would eliminate future guarantees. So, you know, it's with all the guaranteed money, the language in the contract. But this is just ugly. You have your first round pick, a huge addition to like a piece of this team that's going to need to play a big role because this defense was so awful last year. And it's gotten so ugly where it's basically a standstill. He's not moving. The Bengals aren't moving. It's gotten ugly. You question if he'll even play. I think there will be a resolution to all of this. But what are your thoughts? Bad look and bad start to the Shamar Stewart era, only 2 months in Cincy.
Now, hear me out. During his time at Texas A&M, you know, nothing ever came out about his type of character, you know, any on or off the field issues. Nothing came out at the combine about any on or off the field issues. But does Cincy know something that we don't know? And I say this because again, you haven't heard anything. Nothing came out, kind of clean slate. But a team is not just throwing that in the contract for no reason. If I'm correct, I think the last team I remember has done that was Dallas with Randy Gregory. And it might have been Randy Gregory. I think he opted, instead of signing with Dallas, he decided to go sign with Denver, the same exact contract down to the dollar cent amount. And because of that contract, if he was to get in any type of trouble on or off the field, the guaranteed money down the road would kind of void out. Randy Gregory didn't want that, so he obviously went and decided to sign with Denver. That's the only scenario I can think of. But it sounds like a bit of a reach because, again, Shamar Stewart's never had any trouble that we've ever heard of. Nothing around the time of him being drafted into school. But it just makes you think, why would Cincy throw this in the contract for him unless they do this with all their rookies and we just don't know it? And he's just the one that happened to bring it up. Yeah. But it's ugly for both sides. Like, it's not good of a look for your rookie. It was like, hey, we give you an opportunity to come, play ball and make this your home. And this is how we kind of start off. Like, it's a rocky relationship. For Cincy, what makes it worse is Trey Hendrickson. You basically drafted Trey Hendrickson's replacement just in case Hendrickson does want out, and he's not even playing. And I think I briefly saw something. I don't know how true it is, but if Stewart was to never take the field for the Bengals, he can opt to get drafted in 2026. Yeah. And there's 31 teams that can draft him besides Cincy. But it's just like, that is such a bad look on your case, like, for your side of it. And I know at the end of the day you just want your money, but come on, like, opportunity of a lifetime, first round pick, sign your contract, dude. And then again, look, I'm at home sitting on my couch right now. So obviously I probably can't say too much on the situation, but it's just like, again, you first round pick, you kind of owe this to Cincinnati that took a chance on you, that went through all this with a 30-day visit and coming to your pro day and scouting and all these type of things to at least take the field for them. At least participate in practice and work on the contract as you go. But to hold out is so insane. It's such a bad look.
Yeah. No, yeah, it is. And there obviously is the two sides with, to every story. And you do make the point, it's interesting, like, we don't know any off-the-field issues that he's had at Texas A&M. You feel like those probably would have became public, but there might be a character concern from Cincinnati's perspective where they don't want to put that in his contract in the event that something like that happens. But then in that case, you shouldn't have drafted him, Exactly. Like, if there really was a character concern, why would you draft him? Especially in the first round. And to be fair, Stewart just as a prospect, very raw, got incredible athleticism, high ceiling, but the production in college, just his stats and finishing plays and actual sacks and pressures were all very low. Like, production-wise, his numbers weren't that great in college. But the athleticism, we've seen all the comparisons, right, to Myles Garrett. Obviously, the Texas A&M connection is clear, both of them coming out of there. And then the measurables and all that stuff. Athletic freak. But, yeah, it's interesting. And from the Bengals' point, I guess the Bengals' bad look side is they've had issues with this in the past, and they're still having issues with it, like contracts. The Bengals have always kind of been known for the whole doing pretty tough business. You even go back to Jesse Bates, who they believe they franchise tagged, but even that negotiations, those got ugly. He, of course, goes to Atlanta in 2023. Like, those hit a standstill. Now you got the Hendrickson stuff, Shamar Stewart as well. So this is something that the Bengals have been dealt with a lot, and that doesn't make them look great. But it's like you said, your 17th overall pick, your first round pick, your potential Trey Hendrickson replacement, who, in the event that Hendrickson, this deal falls through, whatever, and they move on, let's say, or whatever, he holds out, and Stewart doesn't play, then what? You're down Hendrickson and you don't have Shamar Stewart. It's like, what did you accomplish this offseason? What did you accomplish during the draft? Really nothing. And this is such a big deal because they sucked last year on defense. They were so bad. And a lot of it, too, came in the secondary, not just up front, because Hendrickson did have 17.5 sacks, which was first in the NFL. A lot of it was breakdowns in the secondary. But this is a team that overall needs all the help they can get on defense because they were so bad last year. And if they want to be back in the playoffs, they want to get this thing back on track, they've got to be a better team defensively. It's ugly. Do you feel there will be a resolution to this?
I think he plays. I think they eventually get it figured out. I mean, like you kind of just mentioned, from Cincy's side of it, you don't want to potentially lose Hendrickson and then you lose Stewart and you basically just wasted a first-round draft pick when you could have went so many other areas or personally grabbed a better player. In my opinion, James Pierce probably was the better edge rusher, but they went with Shamar Stewart. So I think it gets figured out and he will be on the field by week 1. But, man, you want to get him on the field now, get him some reps in training camp, get him some reps in preseason. You kind of – both sides need to kind of figure this out, put the Band-Aid on it, and get him out there.
Yeah. It's funny. So you mentioned – so just some dates here for the Stewart stuff. And I think something like you said will get done. But just reading here. So if the Bengals fail to sign Stewart by August 5th, which is 30 days before the start of the NFL season, then they can't trade him. The next deadline is November 11th, which is similar to franchise tag. If Stewart has not signed his contract by then, which November 11th, if he's not out there, then that's a serious issue because now you're 2 months into the season and who knows where they're at. And if Hendrickson's not out there, then I don't know where the Bengals are going to be at on November 11th. Then he's ineligible to play for the rest of the season. So if he hits that mark, then you're really looking at ineligible to play. And then basically he never signs and sits out. That's where you bring up, right, the whole 2026 draft. That would just be crazy. If that.
I don't think something like that has ever happened in the history of the NFL. Like, this would be the first.
The last big holdout that I can remember, and I saw somebody bring it up the other day, was Joey Bosa, I believe it was, back in 2016. He held out a good chunk of Chargers training camp, I remember, and after getting drafted, held out a good chunk of the entire offseason and then good chunk of Chargers training camp as well. That, of course, got done, but that was the last one that I saw earlier today. Somebody mentioned, like I said, that actually happened. Just so happened it was also a defensive end. That got ironed out, but, I mean, it's got to get done. And I think it will. It usually does because it's just bad for both sides. Neither side looks good. At some point, both sides have got to kind of realize, it's better for both parties to get this thing done. Because even if Stewart, and let's say in a world where Stewart does go back to the draft, there's no way he's taken first round.
No, absolutely not. This would definitely character concern. It would be all about his character and, the next team not wanting to go through this again.
Yeah, and then you also have all these teams rank, okay, the edge rushers coming out of next year's class. Where is Stewart even rank among them? So even on top of character concerns, if these edge rushers that are coming out of next year, if teams just think they're better on top of the character stuff, he could really tank. So, yeah. Now, the Trey Hendrickson stuff as well is interesting. This has kind of been happening for a while. We know he wants a new contract, rightfully so. I mean, the guy's had 17 and a half sacks in the 2 years. Back-to-back seasons last year led the league. Contracts hit a impasse. Felt like for a while the negotiations kind of stopped. Now, last couple of days, they picked up again. What are your thoughts on the Hendrickson stuff as well?
You got to sign them. That's another one. You got to sign them. Both of them. I mean, if you can get both of those guys on the field, and like you said, the front seven necessarily for Cincinnati wasn't the issue. It was a lot of the secondary, but we could be, arguably talking about one of the better 1-2 punches if Stewart does gel to what they want him to be, as far as just edge rushers in the league if they can get them on the field at the same time. So for Hendrickson's case, I mean, for Cincy, it would be so dumb to not get something done considering the production and the numbers that you're talking about, how well he's played and just where he ranks amongst edge rushers throughout the league. So for a team that wants to contend, and I know we say it all the time, we're a broken record when we say it, but contend in this division with those quarterbacks, even though luckily for you, one of them is on your team, but you still got Baltimore twice a year. I mean, you want one of the best defensive players in the league on the field at all times, especially come late in the season when you're trying to make a push, get a deal done. He's deserved it. He's been consistent. He's been healthy. Just get the deal done.
Yeah, he's been an excellent free agent signing. And, last 2 years have been career years for him. He's hitting like his peak of his career. He's really hitting like the biggest part of his prime now at 30, which you don't always see right out of players. A lot of times it's decline at 30. Henderson seems to hitting a stride at 30. I think you're looking at 30 to 35 million, which would put him in terms of per year right up there with Garrett. Myles Garrett's at 40. I don't think Henderson will hit that. Danielle Hunter at 35 points. Also be at 35 million. Bosa at 34 million. And then Josh Hines Allen at 28 million. 30 million, 35 million. He's right up there with those names. The Crosby's, the Bosas of the world. He's a beast. And two, like, Browns extend their pass rusher. I know it was some drama, but what are your thoughts on
I just shake my head knowing it, like Michael Parsons is still waiting a contract, and you throw his numbers out, and it's just like, is he gonna get 40? Is he gonna get 40.5? What's the case now? It's
and TJ Watt too. He's looking for his as well.
TJ Watt's another one. This team is ridiculous. You take a step forward, you finally give the fans what they want. Hey, get another receiver. We get George Pickens, but now Michael Parsons isn't even, signed. Licensed a Cowboys fan, but I mean, even not going to go from the Cowboys angle of it. We're going to stick with Henderson, but a little bit of the Parsons angle of it. The longer you wait, and Henderson eventually signs, and so does TJ Watt, that price tag for Parsons goes up. If you say the same for Henderson, depending on what Watt gets, and maybe Parsons, if they get a deal done, what his numbers might look. So it just feels like a triangle right now. Three guys are pointing at each other, waiting, like, hey, who gets signed first? I want more money. Yeah, it's basically Spider-Man meme. Just, hey, whatever he got, I want $2 million more. So it's going to be interesting to kind of wait it out, see who signs first, and let's just continue to watch that dollar amount go up. But I think Henderson gets a deal done before the other two, for being honest.
You think Parsons the last one?
Absolutely. And they're going to have to pay him like $50 million because they're going to wait super last minute to sign him.
Yeah. Myles Garrett already gets the extension. Henderson up near that as well. And TJ Watt. TJ Watt probably want to top both of them, especially with the defensive player of the year in his back pocket.
Yeah.
And then, Cowboys will be waiting. Any concerns about the Parsons contract not getting done?
Just, again, that price tag going up and them paying him, a little too much. We've seen it with Dak. We've seen it. I think CD got a fair amount of what he deserves. We kind of seen it with Zeke, Trayvon Diggs, just these guys getting, a few extra than probably what the all-around number should be compared to some other guys. So, like, again, TJ Watt signs and Henderson signs, and Michael Parsons kind of compares and contrasts. I think he already wants higher than Myles Garrett. But if one of those guys even get close to Myles Garrett, we're talking about, 36 to 38 range, Parsons is going, hey, make it 42. So just waiting last minute, putting themselves in a hole. And, with Parsons' deal getting done eventually, now you got George Pickens to worry about. And it's just forever just like a domino effect of guys needing their money. So hopefully they just get it done before the season starts. We don't need a holdout. I've watched the defense get torched by the Saints in week 2. PTSD. Let's get our guys in the field, please, and thank you.
Yeah, definitely. See Fox today. The facility, that show?
I've heard of it, but I never watched it.
Yeah. I was just popped up earlier today. Does paying Micah Parsons get the Cowboys closer or further from a Super Bowl? Like, what kind of conversation?
What type of question are we? What does the Pacers winning the finals ruin LeBron's legacy? That's literally what I just heard. That's what that was.
Yep. Small market teams. How does the small market teams winning affect LeBron and a big market in LA?
Like, are we serious? Will Luka be able to maintain an 82 game season if the Pacers win the finals? Like, what are we talking about? That's really, it's rage bait. It has to be rage bait. It's not a serious question. It can't be.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. Definitely rage bait. It's crazy how much it's crazy the Cowboys. There was something there was a show on the other day on First Take. It was Dak was I took a picture of it. You know the Awful Announcing Twitter page?
Awesome. Yeah, I love that page actually. Sometimes.
Yeah, there was a picture of, I don't know, whatever. It's like what ESPN is talking about today. And it was a picture of something about Dak's legacy or I don't know. It was just like wasting airtime in the middle of June. You know. Let's see. Yep. Something like that. Oh yeah. What is Dak Prescott's legacy right now? And they wrote, good to see ESPN tackle fresh, relevant topics like Dak Prescott's legacy in the middle of June.
Like, okay, that's what we got to talk about. Right? The NBA Finals is going on right now. We're talking about Dak Prescott's legacy.
Yeah, it's funny. Dak Prescott's legacy.
Can't make this up.
Nope. Anyway, any closing thoughts before we're talking about Dak Prescott's legacy or reacting to more ESPN nonsense or Fox or whatever? Pick your favorite.
No, I think that's all for me. Thank you for watching as usual. Dak Prescott's legacy.
Yeah. Appreciate you all tuning in. We will catch you this weekend. And yeah, talk to you soon.